The desert of Ivarn was silent for a few hours after the battle. The red sand still smoked where plasma bolts had struck. Ryan sat near the dying fire, his armor dented, his face streaked with dust. Princess Alara sat across from him, wrapping a burn on her arm. The air between them was quiet, but filled with unspoken thoughts. Above them, the twin moons glowed faintly through the clouds. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Tirkan were regrouping. Ryan could hear the distant hum of engines. The enemy wasn't done. They were coming back, and this time with their full force. "We should move," Ryan said finally. "They'll track the crash site soon." Alara nodded. "There's a small Zirath outpost 10 miles north. If we can reach it, we can send a signal." Ryan helped the wounded stand. He carried one soldier on his shoulders and led the others across the endless dunes. Hours passed in silence, broken only by wind and distant thunder. Every step sank deep into the red sand. Yet Ryan never slowed. When one guard fell from exhaustion, he lifted him without a word. Alara watched, her heart torn between pride and worry. The human's body looked ready to collapse, yet he moved like a machine that refused to stop. By dawn, the outpost's metal towers appeared in the distance, but so did dark shapes in the sky. Tirkan gunships. "The enemy had found them! They're coming!" shouted one of the guards. Ryan scanned the terrain. Nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. He turned to Alara. "Get your people inside, now." "What about you?" she asked. He gave a faint smile. "I'll buy you time." Before she could protest, he ran toward the wreckage field where his drop pod still burned. Inside the pod was a sealed case he had kept hidden, a small gray cylinder with a warning sign. Project HumanMight, Prototype 1. It was an experiment the Earth Council had abandoned years ago, a device meant to enhance a human's bioelectric energy, turning body and mind into living power. Most who tested it didn't survive. Ryan had sworn never to use it again, but this time wasn't about survival. It was about saving Alara. He strapped the device to his chest and took a deep breath. "If this doesn't work," he whispered, "at least they'll remember why we tried." He pressed the activation key. A silent wave pulsed through the ground. The air trembled. His heartbeat thundered, then slowed. Blue-white arcs of light crawled across his skin, forming patterns like veins of energy. The prototype drew strength from every cell in his body. Pain seared through him, but he didn't fall. Instead, he stood taller. His eyes glowed faintly with light. When the Tirkan ships descended, they saw a lone human standing in the sand, glowing like a living storm. The first wave fired plasma bolts. Ryan moved, faster than their sensors could follow. He rolled aside, sprinted forward, and leapt onto a gunship before the gunners could react. His fist struck with impossible power. The hull dented, then split apart, sending the craft spinning into the dunes. Another ship fired at him, but the bolts bent away as if space itself curved around him. The prototype wasn't just giving him strength. It was amplifying his body's electric field, creating a barrier that twisted energy paths. Inside the outpost, Alara and the soldiers stared in disbelief. Their scanners couldn't explain it. One Zerath guard whispered, "No creature should move like that." Alara felt a chill. This was more than courage. This was something deeper, something human. The kind of strength that came from pain, hope, and willpower combined. Ryan tore through the battlefield. He used fallen wrecks as shields, hurled them like missiles, and struck the Tirkan armor hard enough to leave glowing cracks. The ground shook under his steps. When the Tirkan commander landed, a giant reptilian warlord in graviton armor, the sky turned dark with ash. "So this is the human warrior," the alien roared. "Let us see how long you last." Ryan stood firm. "Long enough," the warlord charged. The sand exploded beneath his feet. Ryan caught the blow with both arms, skidding back but holding steady. The shockwave cracked nearby rocks. Then he countered, driving his fist into the alien's chest plate. The armor shattered. The Tirkan stumbled, roaring in fury. They fought like titans, one with ancient weapons of steel and plasma, the other with the unstoppable will of a man who refused to yield. Sparks and sand filled the air. The alien struck again, but Ryan blocked, twisted, and slammed him into the ground so hard the dunes rippled outward. The commander rose, barely able to stand. "What are you?" he hissed. Ryan's eyes burned with light. "Human." With a final strike, he sent the warlord crashing into the wreck of his own ship. The explosion lit the desert for miles. The remaining Tirkan soldiers panicked. Some fled to their ships, others dropped their weapons and knelt. From orbit, their fleet received fragmented reports. A single human on the surface generating energy readings equal to a capital ship's reactor. The Zerath command fleet intercepted those signals. Emperor Kael'tor himself saw the data and whispered, "Impossible." When the dust settled, Ryan fell to one knee. The glow began to fade. The device had pushed his body far beyond its limit. Every muscle trembled. Elara rushed to him, kneeling in the sand. "Ryan."
"Stop! You'll destroy yourself!"
He looked up weakly, a faint smile on his lips. "I had to make sure you'd live." She held him close, tears in her violet eyes. "You shouldn't have risked your life for me," he whispered. "You risked your people for peace. Guess I'm just keeping my promise." The hum of distant engines filled the air again, this time Zerath rescue ships. They descended swiftly, their banners glowing in the red dawn. Soldiers ran to secure the field, but they stopped when they saw the scene. The human soldier and the princess together, surrounded by the wreckage of an entire Tirkan force. Word spread faster than light. Across the Dominion, people whispered the same thing. A human had saved the royal heir with strength no alien had ever seen. Later, aboard the Zerath flagship, Ryan rested in a medical chamber. The prototype was removed, but its effects left traces in his blood. Energy levels scientists couldn't explain. When he woke, Elara was waiting beside him. She wore no crown, only a simple robe, her expression soft and warm. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I wrestled a black hole," he muttered with a faint grin. She laughed gently. "You're alive. That's enough." He tried to sit up, but she placed a hand on his chest. "Rest, Ryan. The council is already rewriting their history books." "What do you mean?" "They're calling you a legend, the HumanMight. Some are even saying humans may be the strongest species after all." Ryan shook his head. "No, I'm just a soldier who did what he had to." She looked at him thoughtfully. "Maybe that's what makes your kind powerful. You fight not because you love war, but because you love peace." Her words lingered between them, quiet and true. Outside the viewport, Zerath Prime glowed with city lights. For the first time in generations, the Dominion was not preparing for war. They were preparing for hope. When Ryan finally stood before the Galactic Council weeks later, they honored him not as a warrior, but as a symbol of unity. Elara stood beside him, her hand in his. The treaty between Earth and Zerath became more than politics. It became a story told in every academy and every home. Children on distant worlds grew up hearing about the human who fought for peace, who stood alone against an army because he believed one life, one promise, was worth the fight. And whenever Elara spoke of him, she said the same thing. He didn't conquer with weapons. He conquered with heart. That day, as the council applauded and the banners of Earth and Zerath rose together, Ryan looked up at the stars, the same stars where he once saw only enemies, and smiled. The galaxy finally understood what Elara had seen all along. Human strength wasn't in power or weapons. It was in will, in loyalty, in the courage to stand when no one else would. And so began the legend of HumanMight, the man who reminded the stars why humanity could never be ignored again. The great hall of Aegis Prime shimmered under the glow of twin suns. Banners of dozens of worlds hung above the marble floor, but none drew more eyes than the two standing side by side, the blue flag of Earth and the violet sigil of the Zerath Dominion. This day marked the beginning of a fragile peace after 50 years of tension, and every camera in the galaxy was watching. Princess Elara of Zerath, daughter of Emperor Kael'tor, stood tall in her ceremonial gown of silver and crystal thread. Her people called her the jewel of the Dominion, brave, proud, and trained from birth in the ways of diplomacy and war. Yet her calm expression hid a storm inside. She was about to marry not a noble from her world, but a human, one of the very species her ancestors once called primitive. Her future husband, Commander Ryan Hale, waited beside her. His dark earth uniform looked plain next to the shining armor of the alien guards, yet somehow his steady presence filled the hall with quiet strength. He was a soldier, not a politician, chosen by the United Earth Council for his loyalty and his calm nature. He didn't look like the heroes in Zerath legends. No golden eyes, no glowing armor, but there was something unshakable about him. As the ceremony began, The translator drones repeated the vows in dozens of languages. When Alara took Ryan's hand, a ripple of surprise passed through the audience. Humans were physically weaker than most alien races, yet his grip was firm, steady, respectful. When the vows were sealed, a beam of light joined their sigils together in the air. The mark of unity. Across the galaxy, news channels declared, "Peace has begun," but peace never comes easily. After the ceremony, Alara moved into the Grand Palace on Zerath Prime. Ryan followed her. Now titled Consort of the Princess, a role many in the Dominion saw as undeserved. Some nobles whispered that the marriage was a political trick. Others mocked him as a soft creature from a backwater world. Yet Ryan said little. He spent his days studying Zerath customs, learning their language, and helping Alara understand Earth's way of thinking. He didn't complain when treated coldly or ignored by the royal guards. He trained alone at dawn in the palace courtyard, his movements simple but precise. Alara often watched him from her balcony, the quiet man who carried himself with the calm of someone who had already faced death. One evening, during a private dinner, she asked softly, "Do humans always fight so silently?" Ryan looked up. "We don't like to fight," he said. "But when we must, we end it." There was no arrogance in his voice, just certainty. It made her curious. What kind of war had shaped a man like that? Months passed. The treaty held, but unrest grew in the outer colonies. The Tirkan clans, sworn enemies of the Zerath, began raiding trade routes again. They hated the peace and saw Alara's marriage as betrayal. In the Royal Council, generals argued for war. Alara urged restraint, believing peace could still hold. Ryan sat quietly beside her through every meeting. When asked for his opinion, he only said, "If you show them fear, they'll attack harder. If you show them unity, they'll think twice." His words spread through the palace. Some laughed at the human soldier who spoke like a philosopher. Others began to wonder if there was more to him than appeared. One morning, while inspecting a new mining colony near the twin moons of Ivarn, Alara's fleet was ambushed. Tirkan warships burst from hyperspace, firing plasma torpedoes before the royal fleet could raise shields. Explosions tore across the sky. Her escort frigates disintegrated in seconds. Alara's shuttle tried to escape, but a plasma blast hit its rear engine. The ship spun wildly and plunged into the surface of Ivarn, a barren desert world covered in storm clouds. Inside, alarms screamed, smoke filled the cabin, and the crew shouted over each other. The last thing Alara saw before losing consciousness was the sand rushing up to meet them. Far above, on the orbiting human supply vessel Helios, Commander Ryan Hale was reviewing cargo lists when the distress signal arrived. Zerath shuttle down. Life signs unstable. Location, Ivarn Desert region. He froze. That was Alara's code signature. "Helios command," he said into the comm. "Prepare a drop pod." "I'm going after her," the captain's voice barked back. "Negative, Commander. That's Zerath territory. You leave, you break treaty protocol." Ryan stared at the flashing distress beacon on the screen. It pulsed slower with every second, a sign her shuttle's power was failing. "Understood," he said quietly. Then he cut the line. Moments later, a drop pod launched from the ship's bay, streaking through the atmosphere like a falling star. The crash site was chaos. Smoke poured from the broken shuttle, and plasma fire scorched the sand. Alara woke to the sound of shouting. Her guards were trying to hold off approaching figures. My brain, the Tirkan raiders had already landed. Their reptilian bodies gleamed under the stormlight, heavy rifles in their claws. "Defend the princess," one Zerath soldier cried before being thrown aside by a plasma blast. Alara crawled out of the wreck, coughing. She grabbed a blaster from a fallen guard, but her arms trembled. The Tirkan leader strode toward her, tall and armored, his voice dripping with mockery. "So this is the princess who married a human. Let us see if your weak alliance can save you now." Then, a thunderous crash interrupted him. A streak of light slammed into the ground between them. Ryan's drop pod. The metal shell hissed open and he stepped out, wearing only light armor and carrying an old Earth rifle. His boots sank into the sand as he looked at the enemy lines. "Ryan," Alara gasped, half in disbelief. "You came?" He didn't answer. He just looked at the Tirkan raiders, his expression calm but cold. The leader sneered. "You're alone, human." Ryan raised his weapon. "That's enough." The battle that followed became legend. He moved faster than Alara thought possible. He ducked under plasma fire, rolling across the sand, returning shots with perfect aim. When his rifle ran dry, he switched to his combat knife, using the terrain to his advantage. He slammed one alien into another, threw sand into their sensors, and used fallen wreckage as cover. Every motion was precise, no wasted energy, no panic. His training, his instincts, everything he'd learned in war returned like a storm. Elara watched as the Tirkhan began to falter. They expected him to fall, yet he didn't. Even wounded, he stood taller, stronger. When the last raider retreated, the desert was silent again except for the hiss of burning metal. Ryan walked to the wreck and lifted the heavy debris trapping Elara's pilot. His arms trembled but didn't stop until the man was free. "Are you hurt?" he asked her. She shook her head, still stunned. You fought them all?" He shrugged slightly. "They were just soldiers. You're alive. That's what matters." Elara had seen warriors before, Zerath champions who trained for centuries, but none like him. There was something different in his strength. Not just muscle or reflex, but will, the kind that refused to give up even when logic said it should. As the night fell over the red desert, Ryan built a fire from broken hull panels. He checked the survivors' wounds and shared his last ration packs. When Elara tried to thank him, he only said, "You'd have done the same." She looked at him quietly. "Perhaps. But you didn't come for duty, did you?" He met her gaze. "No, I came because you're my wife." Her heart softened for the first time since the wedding. Maybe this human, this quiet soldier from a distant blue planet, was far more than the galaxy believed. Above them, unseen in the clouds, Tirkhan warships circled again, searching, preparing another strike. Elara didn't know it yet, but soon she would see the full measure of what humans were capable of. And when that happened, the entire galaxy would remember the name HumanMight.